lovelies, how's it going? If you're new here, my name is Jamie and I am the Kansan Raider. So I had started a series last year about me going back through the Harry Potter series since I have become a Christian to see if it really does promote witchcraft and so on. So far I have said no, and after reading the third book I am still saying no. Now, does she actually have a real form of witchcraft in this book where it's something that's we're actually told as Christians to stay away from? Yes, in a way, but I want to go a little more in depth than that here in a minute. First and foremost, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. We'll say my first read along as a Christian. This one has been my favorite so far, but I've only read 4 books because I have read the 4th one. I will be working on the 5th one next month, but right now this one is my favorite. I absolutely love the foreshadowing that JK Rowling has in this book, and we will be talking about it, so I want to throw out a huge spoiler alert. Now, let's get into a few things that I really want to touch base on within this book. So the first one and foremost is the biggest on why this was my favorite, and that is the foreshadowing. The foreshadowing in this is just beautifully done, and it starts in chapter 1 and goes on straight through. There are several subjects that are foretold in this book, so we're gonna go over each subject, some of the things that are foretold that after, like, when you read it once you're like, oh, okay, you don't really like see it, but like several rereads you see it and you're like, wow, she told us straight from the beginning about these. Talk about some of the major characters. Obviously we have Harry, Hermione, and Ron again, but we also get a couple new ones. We get Sirius Black and Professor Lupin. Obviously we still have Snape and we still have McGonagall. Another new character is Professor Trelawney, who we'll talk about in a minute. She's one of my least favorites, but another one that we will talk about is Aunt March. She is, I do not like Aunt March. In list of orders of the villains in Harry Potter that I despise, it goes Umbridge, then Aunt March. Like, she beats out Voldemort for me. So, first and foremost, let's go to Aunt March because she is just only in the beginning. She is a really horrible person. She rags on Harry's parents. She constantly compares them to, like, breeding dogs because she is a dog breeder. And she's always saying that if there's something wrong with the mother, there's something wrong with the child. And finally, Harry just has enough with her. Severus Snape, we get a little bit more context of Snape in this book and his feud with Harry's father, and that also comes in the form of Professor Lupin and Sirius Black. Professor Snape, especially like when Black is captured later on in the book, he is just very gung-ho for him to get a Dementor's kiss, Now, Professor Lupin, you find out that he was once friends with Harry's father, but he is also a very well-liked professor. He's very hands-on, which so far the other 2 Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers have not been like that, so Professor Lupin is the first to do this, and a lot of the students love him for this. But there is also some foreshadowing with Lupin in this book that is really beautifully done, and I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that. But first and foremost, his name, Lupin, what it means, and then he has Snape making these potions for him, but you don't know what they are, because when him and Harry are having their first like really good talk, Snape comes in and hands him a potion, and Lupin tells Harry that he has an illness that he has to take these potions for. Their first time in Defense Against the Dark Arts, he takes them to go against a boggart, and a boggart, no one really knows exactly what they look like, but they hide in places such as like a wardrobe or cabinets, drawers, such things like that, which you will get boggarts further down in other books. When they're facing it, all the kids in the class have a chance to face it until Harry's turn. When Harry is about to go up against the... I'm going to put that down. Once Harry is ready to go up against the boggart, Lupin actually jumps in front of him, because they don't really know what Harry's real fear is. But Lupin jumps in front of it, and it turns into a full moon. Then when Snape, because Professor Lupin misses a few classes, Professor Snape jumps in and is substitute, and he has the class go over the chapters of werewolves, even though that's not exactly where they are in the curriculum. He's like, oh no, you're gonna read this.
Turn to page 394.
And there's a reason why that's like one of the like pettiness, grudgy deals that that Snape has against Professor Lupin, and it all lays down out to point to Lupin being a werewolf. Oh, I also forgot there is another character named Peter Pettigrew, which we're going to talk about. I don't think I said his name, but when they confront Peter Pettigrew, you get the kind of the backstory of all what happened in Voldemort finding Lily and James and Harry. But you find out that James, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew, who were all friends with Lupin, became which you will also find out, an anime guy. I think it's anime guy, that's plural, and then animagus is singular. So they all become anime guy to be with Lupin while he is a werewolf and while he's studying at Hogwarts. You also find out there's this shack, the Shrieking Shack, and it has this myth about it that it's haunted because you could hear shrieking and all that. Well, it turns out that was Lupin there. Sirius turns into a black dog, which we'll get more into on the foreshadowing. James was a stag, and Peter Pettigrew is a rat. Peter Pettigrew, we're gonna go into him while I'm thinking about him. Peter Pettigrew is really Scabbers, and the foreshadowing with Scabbers is just truly, utterly amazing. That is the most foreshadowing that we get throughout the book that I really, really love. So that foreshadowing comes in the very first chapter, and that is when Ron is telling Harry about Arthur. Ron's father wins a Daily Prophet cash prize, technically galleon prize, but cash prize, no, you guys understand. And they go down to Egypt as a whole family to see Bill, because Bill works in Egypt for the bank Gringotts. Well, while Ron is there, he buys Harry this, like, it looks like almost like a spinning top. It's called a sneakoscope, and if anyone is untrustworthy, the sneakoscope around you, the sneakoscope goes off. Well, it was going off around Ron, so Ron thinks it's broken, but he had bought it anyway, and he sent it to Harry. Well, while it's with Harry, it doesn't go off until he's around Ron again. Well, Ron always carries Scabbers, and that is why the stinkoscope is going off, because it's Scabbers, and Scabbers is Peter Pettigrew, who is a very untrustworthy person. Then we get where Crookshanks, who Hermione ends up buying at the creature menagerie. Crookshanks is constantly going after Scabbers. Crookshanks is the cat that Hermione buys in this book, and he is part of a magical creature. He's like not a normal cat. He senses animagi. Crookshanks is constantly going after Scabbers because he can sense that he is an animagi or animagus, and he... Another thing that we get that is a bit of foreshadowing is when we're told of Sirius Black's crime. All what was left of Peter was a finger. Well, Scabbers is missing a toe. Also, another thing that we learn is Scabbers has been in the Weasley family for 12 years. A normal rat has the common life of like 3 or 4 years. Now on to Sirius Black. Sirius Black, at first you think is a very bad person. He is said to have murdered 13 people, one of them being Peter Pettigrew, the rest of them being Muggles. And he is said to have been a follower of Lord Voldemort, and he has been in Azkaban for 12 years. Azkaban is the wizard prison, and he has just escaped, and nobody knows how he did it because he is the only wizard to have done it. So they have no idea how it was done. Now, the reason why people think Black is a follower of Voldemort and they think he betrayed Lily and James Potter as well is because of everything that happened that night in Godric's Hollow. Lily James took Dumbledore's advice in a protection spell that only can be broken if they have a secret keeper, and that secret keeper tells someone else. So when they do this spell, if they're secret keeper, if they are, it doesn't matter what happens to them, even to like the point of death, as long as they do not willingly tell another person, that spell cannot be broken. Well, everyone thinks Sirius Black was Lily and James's secret keeper, and that he turned them over to Lord Voldemort that night. And while he was trying to escape, Peter Pettigrew approached him and tried to stop him, and Sirius Black killed him and the 12 other people, and all that was left was Peter's finger. Well, once Peter has been revealed by Lupin and Black, you get the real story that Lily and James knew that everyone would go after Sirius Black because they knew how close they were, so they decided to use someone else. They decided to use Peter as their secret keeper, and Peter, who is a very weak-minded person and ended up falling into being a follower of Lord Voldemort and being a spy for him, and ended up giving him the location of Lily, James, and Harry. Figured it all out, went and confronted Peter. Peter cut off his own finger and blew up the street that they were on, and he was the one that killed the 12 people, not Sirius Black, and Sirius Black took the fall. Now, going on into another foreshadowing bit with Sirius is he is a big black dog. Well, Harry keeps seeing a big black dog around. Well, the first time he sees it is after he leaves the Dursleys. The second time, I can't remember quite exactly the second time he sees it, but I remember that he sees it with Crookshanks, and Crookshanks knows that Black is one, trustworthy, and that he's an animagus, and Crookshanks is helping Black try to get to Scabbers so Black can have his revenge. While editing, Jamie here, I forgot to mention something else about Sirius with the foretelling, and that is his name, Sirius. His name is after a star called the Dog Star, which is part of the Canis Major. And when the Canis Major is seen, its rising is coincided with the hottest time of summer, also known as the Dog Days. Now, the other foreshadowing bit we have is Hermione having a time turner. Now, Hermione is nuts and signs up for all the classes. She gets into everyone that when they reach the castle, McGonagall pulls her aside and takes her into her office. They have a little conversation, but you don't know what that conversation is, and then they leave. Then throughout the book, Ron and Harry are sitting there and they're like, they think they're talking to her, and then when they look, she's like disappeared, and they're like, where did Hermione go? Or they're sitting there and they're talking, and they're like, where's Hermione? And then all of a sudden she appears, and they're wondering how she's doing that. And there's always the question, like, wait, how are you doing this? When she's doing her homework, they're like, how are you doing this? This class is the same time as this class, and we know you were in this class. So you're trying to figure out, how is she doing this? How is she doing? Well, finally you figure out after they have arrested Sirius again that she has a time turner, and she uses this time turner, her and Harry, to go back a few hours so that they can help Buckbeak and Sirius escape their death penalties. That is the most of the foreshadowing that I can remember. I'm probably missing some details, but like I said, it's been a few months since I have read this book. Now, the other character that we're going to talk about is Professor Trelawney. We haven't talked about her yet, and she... oh my goodness. This is the reason why I don't think JK Rowling is pushing witchcraft, because in this book we are introduced to divination, which I do have when Harry is in Diagon Alley, goes to buy his book. There's a section that's dedicated to fortune telling, which fortune telling, as a Christian, we are told not to partake in. But here's the thing. When we meet Professor Trelawney, so let's go over how we meet Professor Trelawney, and then kind of go from how quite I feel about it. So they all get into the divination class, and they're like, where's the teacher? A voice came suddenly out of the shadows, a soft, misty sort of voice. Welcome, it said. How nice to see you in the physical world at last. Girl, what do you mean the physical world? You're in the physical world. Harry's immediate impression was of a large glittering insect. Yeah, she has these big glasses that magnify her eyes. I'm not going to read too much into that. I'm going to jump down to when she talks again. Sit, my children, sit, she said, and they all climbed awkwardly into armchairs or sank onto poufs. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat themselves around the same round table. Welcome to divination, said Professor Trelawney, who seated herself in a winged armchair in front of the fire. My name is Professor Trelawney. You may not have seen me before. I find that descending too often into the hustle and bustle of the main school clouds my inner eye. I don't like the inner eye thing, but again, hold on, we'll talk about it here in a minute. We're going to jump down again a little bit. So you have chosen to study divination, the most difficult of magical arts. I must warn you at the outset that if you do not have the sight, there's very little I'll be able to teach you. Books can only take you so far in this field. And we're going to jump down again to Professor Trelawney. Many witches and wizards, talented though they are in the area of loud bangs and smells and sudden disappearances, are yet unable to penetrate the veiled mysteries of the future. It is a gift granted to few. So, for Christians, when they have a gift of the Spirit called prophecy, they can prophesize the future. But here's the thing, that comes from God. That's not the person doing it. Versus fortune telling, which comes from a whole different place. And the whole inner eye is very demonic. And if you do that deep dive, fair warning, you will find out some evil stuff.
On editing, Jamie here, there was something that I forgot to say with Professor Trelawney and her predictions, that yes, she has like maybe one or two that do come true, but we can also see this in the Bible when God uses non-believers, pagans, to do his will. A good example would be when Saul goes to see the medium and she does like a seance for him and calls Samuel, and God allows Samuel to go and rebuke Saul. That is just one way we can see God using non-believers in him as ways to show himself. And I would say this we can connect with Professor Trelawney in that she is mostly a fraud, but there's like 2 prophecies that she has within the series that comes true.
But for the most part, why I don't think JK Rowling is pushing this is because through Harry and Ron, they constantly make a joke of it. McGonagall calls out Trelawney all the time, and Trelawney is a fraud. She is not a good fortune teller at all. Her fortunes, some may come true, and some, and by some I mean most, don't. Where we get the first part of her being a fraud would be on page 109, where everyone goes to Transfiguration class with Professor McGonagall, and they're all gloomy and they're not acting right. And I forgot to tell you that Professor Trelawney has predicted Harry's death, and everyone's like shaken up by it. They're like, oh my goodness, Harry's gonna die. And then once they get to McGonagall's class, McGonagall's like, what's the matter with y'all? And they're like, we just had divination. She goes, which one of you is dying? And everyone's like, what? And she goes, every year Trelawney predicts a student's death. And this is one of the snarks that I love from Professor McGonagall. You look in excellent health to me, Potter, so you will excuse me if I don't let you off homework today. I assure you that if you die, you need not hand it in. Absolutely love it. She's just an amazing character. Everyone has pretty much left for Christmas except for a few people, and this time Harry, Ron, and Hermione have all stayed for Christmas, and they go to the banquet, and there's like 12 people there. Professor Trelawney comes in, and Dumbledore goes, Sybil, this is a pleasant surprise. I have been crystal gazing, Headmaster, said Professor Trelawney, and to my astonishment I saw myself abandoning my solitary luncheon and coming to join you. Who am I to refuse the promptings of fate? I at once hastened from my tower, and I do beg you to forgive my lateness. Dumbledore says, won't you, sit down? But she goes, I dare not, Headmaster. If I join the table, we shall be 13. Nothing could be more unlucky. Never forget that when 13 dine together, the first to rise will be the first to die. And this is where I love Professor McGonagall. We'll risk it, Sybil. Do sit down. The turkey's getting stone cold. And, she does hesitate to sit down, but she does sit down. She asks, where's Professor Lupin? And this is one of the times he's missing, and Dumbledore says that he's ill. And McGonagall snaps with, but surely you already knew that, Sybil. And Trelawney, like, glares at McGonagall. I really hope they keep this scene in the TV show, because this would be, like, just beautiful. Certainly I knew, Minerva, she said quietly, but one does not parade the fact that one is all-knowing. I frequently act as though I am not possessed of the inner eye so as not to make others nervous. That explains a great deal, Professor McGonagall said Professor McGonagall tartly. If you must know, Minerva, I have seen that poor Professor Lupin will not be with us for very long. He seems aware himself that his time is short. He positively fled when I offered 2 crystal gates for him. Imagine that, said Professor McGonagall dryly. So McGonagall constantly, like, points out how Sybil's Professor Trelawney is just a fraud. And I absolutely love her snark. So, reasons why I don't think JK Rowling is pushing witchcraft is because through her main characters that everyone loves, she just pokes fun at divination and shows how much of a fraud it is. But there are times that, like I said, Trelawney does go into an actual trance and does predict something that will happen. We're going to go into a creature that JK Rowling has made that is just one of the, like, most terrifying creatures I have read in all of my fantasy readings, and that is the Dementors. The Dementors are basically fear itself transformed. And the first time we get a Dementor is on page 82. They're on the train, and the Dementors are looking for Sirius Black. And the Dementors are the guards of the prison of Azkaban. And it says, but the door slid slowly open before Lupin could reach it. Standing in the doorway, illuminated by the shivering flames in Lupin's hands, was a cloaked figure that towered to the ceiling. Its face was completely hidden beneath its hood. Harry's eyes darted downward, and what he saw made his stomach contract. There was a hand protruding from the cloak, and it was glistening, grayish, slimy looking, and scabbed, like something dead that had decayed in water. But it was visible only for a split second, as though the creature beneath the cloak sensed Harry's gaze. The hand was suddenly withdrawn into the folds of its black cloak. And then the thing beneath the hood, whatever it was, drew a long, slow, rattling breath, as though it were trying to suck something more than air from its surroundings. An intense cold swept over all of them. Harry felt his own breath catch in his chest. The cold went deeper than his skin. It was inside his chest. It was inside his very heart. Harry ends up passing out and hearing screaming. And then when he wakes up, he's like, who was screaming? Everyone's like, no one was screaming, Harry. He was the only one that was really, truly affected. And Dumbledore, when at the feast, he warns all of the students that the Dementors are outside the grounds at the entrances to, keep an eye out for Sirius Black. And this is the warning he gives the students. They are stationed at every entrance to the grounds, and while they are with us, I must make it plain that nobody is to leave school without permission. Dementors are not to be fooled by tricks or disguises, or even invisibility cloaks. It is not in the nature of a Dementor to understand pleading or excuses. I therefore warn each and every one of you to give them no reason to harm you. So you find out a little bit more, like they don't care if you wrong them or get on their wrong side. They will go after you. Harry also comes across the Dementors a second time when playing Quidditch. They, for some reason, are in the school grounds, and when he's playing Quidditch, they all like gather around him, and he ends up falling quite a good ways. And when he is doing that, he's falling, he not only hears a woman screaming, but he gets a little bit more, and it goes, "Not Harry, not Harry, please not Harry. Stand aside, you silly girl, stand aside now. Not Harry, please no, take me, kill me instead." And this is when it clicks for Harry that anytime the Dementors are around and he starts getting affected, he hears his mother's last moments. He has another talk with Professor Lupin, and Professor Lupin gives him this. "Dementors are among the foulest creatures that walk this earth. They infest the darkest, filthiest places. They glory in decay and despair. They drain peace, hope, and happiness out of the air around them. Even muggles feel their presence, though they cannot see them. Get too near a Dementor, and every good feeling, every happy memory will be sucked out of you. If it can, the Dementor will feed on you long enough to reduce you to something like itself, soulless and evil. You will be left with nothing but the worst experiences of your life and the worst that happened to you." And then he explains to Lupin that when they are around him, he ends up hearing when Voldemort murders his mother. Lupin ends up agreeing to teach Harry how to fight off Dementors, and that is in the form of a Patronus charm. This Patronus charm produces a light, and a lot of times it can come out as an animal. Well, I love the Patronus charm because it reminded me, and how I connected it with Christ, is that Christ is our light and he is our shield. God is many times, especially in the Psalms, referred to as a shield for his people. And as I just read with the Dementors, they glorify death and decay, much like Satan and his demons. And we can call upon God and his word whenever we are feeling hopeless and like everything is just the worst of the worst, and it creates that shield around us and protects us from any weapons the enemy has against us. Prayer is also another way we can battle against Satan and his demons, and the Patronus charm just kind of reminded me of how prayer and reading God's word helps against spiritual attacks. You find out the reason why Harry has such a big effect versus everyone else is because he went through a more traumatic event when he was younger, obviously witnessing his mother's death. And because of this, the Dementors kind of really feed off of him. And then we get a whole chapter called The Dementor's Kiss, and that is when they are coming after Sirius, and this is when Harry sees someone across the way produce this really, my mind blanked on the word, this really powerful Patronus, and which we later learn it's him, but at first he thinks it's his father. There is one last thing I kind of want to talk about, and it's in the last chapter, and it's when Dumbledore and Harry are having a talk. Dumbledore says, Pettigrew owes his life to you. You have sent Voldemort a deputy who is in your debt. When one wizard saves another wizard's life, it creates a certain bond between them. And I'm much mistaken if Voldemort wants his servant in debt of Harry Potter. I don't want to bond with Pettigrew, said Harry. He betrayed my parents. This is magic at its deepest, its most impenetrable, Harry. But trust me, the time may come when you will be very glad you saved Pettigrew's life. That right there is foreshadowing into a future book. I'm not going to tell you which book, but it is a foreshadowing into a future book. And that's another thing that I've come to find so far in the first 4 books that I have read. There is very much foreshadowing to how it all ends, or certain events that will happen in the last 2 books, so to speak, mostly the last book. And there's also a lot of foreshadowing on what Harry is to Voldemort, because there is quite a lot that connects Voldemort and Harry, and the reason why Voldemort went after Harry. So, yeah, there is just a lot of foreshadowing and a lot of connecting the dots between Voldemort and Harry that I personally did not see when I was younger and rereading this like a million times. I just loved it so much. But now that I'm older and I'm actually using what our English teachers taught us and going through stories and seeing how amazing stories can be written, JK Rowling has top tier writing. This series in general, like I can see why I loved it when I was younger. It's amazing, and it's still very relevant to this day. I can see why people to this day still love Harry Potter. On the next book, Goblet of Fire, I'm gonna have to break that probably into 2 videos because it is a chunky book. I mean, we went from this book to something that's this thick. I don't have it downstairs with me, but yeah. I am going to try and get you guys that video. I don't know if it'll be this month. It might be next month. But I'm going to try and get you guys that video, and then that way I'm back on track and I can start the 5th book. Well, technically restart it because I did start it last year, but I ended up having a baby and got put off on the whole thing. But I'm going to restart it next month and go from there, and I will do those videos containing to that book right after. But I think this will be the last book I only do 1 video on to cover the entire book, because it's so skinny versus the rest of them that are very thick and at least 600 to 700 pages, if not more. Thank you so much for listening to me babble about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.